Imagine a world where every morning brought the quiet fear that an invisible shadow might slip through the doorway and change your family forever. For most of human history, this was the standard setting of life, where a sudden fever or a mysterious rash was not just an illness, but a potential death sentence for an entire community. We lived in a state of constant defensive uncertainty, watching as diseases reshaped the maps of our cities and the branches of our family trees without any way to fight back. This was the era before we understood that the very thing trying to kill us could be used to save us. Before the Great Shift in the late 1700s, the dominant threat was a disease that had haunted humanity for thousands of years. It was a relentless force that claimed a massive percentage of those it touched, and even those who survived were often left with deep scars or lost their sight. People were desperate for any kind of protection. In some parts of the world, they practiced a technique that involved taking a small amount of material from a sick person and intentionally scratching it into the skin of a healthy person. The hope was that a controlled, mild case would provide future protection. It was a terrifying gamble, because sometimes it worked perfectly, but other times it triggered a full-blown outbreak that killed the very person trying to stay safe. This was the bottleneck of medicine, where the only known cure was almost as dangerous as the disease itself. The world needed a way to trigger the body to defend itself without actually putting the person in mortal danger. The breakthrough did not come from a high-tech laboratory or a prestigious university, but from the keen observations of a country doctor walking through the rural fields of England. This doctor, Edward Jenner, noticed something curious about the people who worked with cattle. The milkmaids seemed to have beautiful, clear skin, untouched by the scars that marked so many others. They often caught a much milder disease from the cows, called cowpox, which caused a few blisters but was never fatal. There was an old bit of folk wisdom suggesting that once you had the cowpox, the much deadlier human version could not touch you. Jenner decided to move beyond observation and put this theory to a rigorous, if controversial, test. In 1796, Jenner took material from a cowpox blister on a milkmaid and transferred it to a young boy. A few days later, the boy felt a little under the weather, but he recovered quickly. Then came the moment of truth that would define the next 2 centuries of human history. Jenner exposed the boy to the actual deadly disease that everyone feared. The boy did not get sick. He was completely immune. This was the turning point where we realized we did not have to use the killer to fight the killer. We could use a weaker, related relative of the disease to train the immune system. It was the birth of a new kind of medicine that worked by teaching the body how to win a fight before the real enemy even arrived. This discovery was incredible, but it faced immediate hurdles. At first, the idea of intentionally infecting yourself with a disease from a cow seemed repulsive or even sacrilegious to many. There was also the massive logistical problem of how to scale this up. In a world without refrigeration or rapid transport, moving the protective material from one village to another was a monumental task. For a time, the system relied on human chains. To get the vaccine across the ocean to distant colonies, doctors would vaccinate a group of children one by one during the voyage, using the fresh blisters of one child to vaccinate the next just as the first was healing. It was a slow, delicate, and often grueling process, but it worked. As the 1800s progressed, the system began to standardize. Another giant of science, Louis Pasteur, realized that Jenner's principle could be applied to more than just one disease. He worked on anthrax and rabies, developing ways to artificially weaken germs in a lab setting. This moved the process from a lucky find in a cow pasture to a deliberate, engineered system of protection. This was the era when manufacturing began to take over. We stopped relying on random farm incidents and started building the foundations of the modern pharmaceutical industry. Standards were set for how these materials were collected and distributed, ensuring that a dose given in one city was just as effective as a dose given in another. The ripple effects of this technology were staggering. It changed the very fabric of society and economics. For the first time in history, parents could reasonably expect all of their children to survive into adulthood. This led to a massive shift in how families were structured and how people invested in their futures. Cities became more stable because the constant threat of a sudden wiping out plague began to recede. In the military, more soldiers were traditionally lost to disease than to actual combat. But with these new protections, armies became more resilient and capable of long-term campaigns. On a global scale, the race was on to see which nations could protect their populations most effectively, as a healthy workforce was the primary engine of the burgeoning Industrial Revolution. The economic impact cannot be overstated. When people stay healthy, they work, they build, and they innovate. The investment in public health systems, which grew alongside the development of vaccines, became one of the most successful financial decisions in human history. We moved from a reactive society that scrambled to bury the dead to a proactive society that built infrastructure to keep people living. This shift in mindset eventually led to one of humanity's greatest achievements, where after a massive global effort of coordination and cooperation, we completely eradicated the disease that Jenner had first targeted. It was a total victory over a foe that had existed since the dawn of civilization. Today, we are seeing the next evolution of this journey. We have moved from using weakened germs to using the very blueprints of those germs. Modern platforms allow us to design a response to a new threat in a matter of days or weeks, rather than years. We no longer have to wait for a natural version of the disease to appear. We can look at the genetic code of a virus and build a targeted instruction manual for our immune systems. The speed and precision we have achieved today are the direct descendants of that first scratch on a boy's arm in a country garden. We now view our immune systems as a programmable layer of our biology, capable of being updated and reinforced against whatever new challenges might emerge from the natural world. The legacy of this advancement is the freedom it has given us. We live with a level of safety that our ancestors would find miraculous. We can travel the world, gather in massive crowds, and live in densely packed cities without the constant, paralyzing fear of an invisible reaper. It is a reminder that technical progress is not just about making faster machines or taller buildings. It is about expanding the boundaries of human life itself. We have taken the tools of nature and turned them into a shield, proving that through observation, experimentation, and global cooperation, we can rewrite the rules of our own survival. As we moved through the 1800s, our ability to keep people healthy and alive led to a sudden and massive boom in city populations. This success created its own set of problems, because as cities grew more crowded, we ran out of room to spread out. We had to start looking toward the sky. But the higher we wanted to go, the more we realized that our physical infrastructure was lagging behind our medical progress. Just as we needed a breakthrough to make the world safe from invisible threats, we soon needed a breakthrough to make our new, towering world safe from the physical dangers of height and gravity. In our next chapter, we will move forward to the year 1853 to see how a different kind of safety innovation changed the shape of our cities forever. We will explore how a single demonstration of a fail-safe mechanism allowed us to stop fearing the fall and start building the modern skyscraper. This next leap in technology would redefine the stakes of urban life, taking the humans we saved from disease and lifting them hundreds of feet into the air. If you are finding these stories of human ingenuity fascinating, make sure to follow along as we continue to trace the timeline of the ideas that built our world.